Well, I'm really happy to be with all of you. It's so much fun to feel connected to different parts of the world um, and to see and experience different people and your different stages of life and different occupations. And I always try to tailor what I say, which might be valuable and appropriate to you. And I know, Nikki, you're so excited to hear me because you heard my other talk. So one of the things I have behind me, I have 26 books. So I have a lot to talk about. But I think what's most relevant for many people I'm hearing today is certainly I talk about the workplace because we all have work and so forth. But I think the fundamentals of gender start at home. When we're in the workplace, we're actually kind of a blend of our male side and our female side. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's actually what we want to achieve, is a balance of masculine qualities that are natural to us and feminine qualities that are natural to us. But what I experience, and I particularly appreciate whoever shared women focusing on their weaknesses. That would be an example of where women really are judging themselves by the standard of men. Now, you can certainly take that the wrong way, but you'll see what I'm about to say. Is if you look at a classroom of little boys and the teacher asks a question, all little boys raise their hand. I have the answer, I have the answer. And the little girls are like, well, I'm not so sure I have the answer. I want to gather enough data so that I have a strong opinion here. Whereas males tend to be more risk takers. So they appear to be more confident, like I can do it, I can do it. But maybe they have no idea how to do it. And if you don't understand that guys are like shooting wild all the time, as a woman, you kind of go, I guess I don't have that confidence. I have that confidence. And you're just not like a man. You have to realize he hasn't gathered all that data to finally form a strong belief and opinion. So I do teach a class. One of my books is Work With Me. I wrote with a woman who also teaches gender intelligence. And we talked about how these gender differences affect us in the workplace. But I think whether we talk about the workplace or we talk about at home, and we all have at home life, I focus primarily on that because that's where we can see our differences most strongly. And that's where we can also nurture balance to our differences. And that will make sense a little bit in a minute. Nikki got excited when he wrote down cave. All right, so let's understand why men need their cave. It's very common, and when I first started talking about gender differences, I observed that one of the complaints women would have is their men would come home and ignore them. And men's complaints would they come home and their wives want to talk about the day. And I go, why is that the case? And I looked at my own life and realized that I just needed a little time for myself, and then I could interact and wanted to interact. And, you know, a woman would say, well, in the beginning of the relationship, when we were dating, you weren't that way. And that's because we live in our apartments. We're all alone. We get that alone time, and then we want to interact, and then we get to go back to our apartments. And so there's this nice distance between us. Particularly for men, that old saying, distance makes the heart grow fonder, is highly significant. So that's why I developed the idea that, you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. It's like we're from different worlds. And on Mars, after a day of work, the men go to their caves. Nobody bothers them. Everybody understands they need to be alone. And women form circles and talk and share on Venus. So that was just a metaphor to be light about this and playful about this for people to find themselves in that if they did. If they don't, okay. Well, then later, you know, this becomes really developed ideas and books and everything. And this is now 30 years later since I wrote that book, 40 years later since I was teaching those ideas. And I'd say about 6 years ago, it became clear to me that there was so much confusion around gender. And I'd already written one of my books, not even back here, is on brain science, how our brains are different. And then that was disputed, called junk science. So I thought I really need to explain to people biologically how significant our differences is. And on the surface, just the fact that a woman can make babies and a man can't, that's a major difference. But what we see is that biologically, to make babies, women have a different hormone set up in their body. And nobody disputes that. Everybody knows that women's hormones are changing all the time. After their period, estrogen levels start rising. They peak after about 10, 12 days. Then progesterone levels start to rise. Estrogen drops a little bit. Then it all starts to drop completely and it starts all over again. So there's a cycle. Men don't have that cycle. And then we can study sociology and psychology. We can see that actually certain behaviors stimulate hormones in women and certain behaviors stimulate hormones in men, the same behaviors. But when it comes to health and well-being, women have a very different from men balance of hormones when they feel happy. And men, particularly when they're feeling their best self, when they're selfless, they're generous, they're considerate, they're compassionate, they're empathetic, they're interested, they're motivated. Well, guess what? There's a hormone that gets produced in a man's body at those times called testosterone. And if he doesn't have a normal level of testosterone, he can't access those aspects of masculinity. Now, when a woman is interested and motivated and all the things I just said, she's also experiencing her masculine side. So we have to define masculine side and feminine side. And remember, I'm not saying men are only this and women are only that. It's that we all have it within us, but it's very important to define those distinctions, because when women become too masculine and they've denied their feminine side, they're unhappy. And when men become too sensitive and they've denied their masculine side, they're weak. And this is reality, and I'll give you the research on that. As a man, we need, generally speaking, go to any doctor, everybody agrees that a man needs to have about 10 to 30 times more testosterone in his body than a woman if he feels good. Okay, a man needs to be making testosterone to feel good and have all those qualities. If his testosterone is low, he's depressed, he's irritable. If his testosterone is low and he's irritable, his testosterone is low and his estrogen is high. Now, what's interesting is women, on the other hand, in order to experience well-being and happiness, measure a happy woman, her estrogen levels are always, at that point when she's happy, 10 times higher than a man. Measure a man's estrogen levels when he's angry and selfish and mean. His estrogen levels are the same as a woman's when she's happy. Now, nobody knew that, except look at it. That's the research shows it. Women have low estrogen, they become unhappy, they're stressed. When a woman's producing stress hormones, her estrogen levels are low. When a man is producing stress hormones, his testosterone levels are low. So now we live in a world of stress and we think the outer world is causing our stress, but the outer world doesn't cause our stress. And I think most of you are aware of that. It's how we interpret the outer world in contrast to our wishes, wants, and needs, and so forth. So if my husband is in his cave, I call that when he's in his time to rebuild his testosterone. And that's another dynamic, which is whenever men are in a situation where they feel challenged in some way, but not stressed at all. Okay, challenged and not stressed at all. Remember, when men are stressed, their testosterone levels are rising, but it's turning into estrogen. A stressed man has higher estrogen, low testosterone. So if you can put a man in a situation where he's challenged, and that means there's no stress, but he's challenged. Then what occurs? No adrenaline being produced, no cortisol being produced, but the challenge alone produces testosterone. And there's no estrogen being produced, so his estrogen levels can drop down. Then he can rebuild his testosterone. So then I figured out this is the foundation of why cave time is so universal for men around the world, which is they love to rebuild their testosterone levels. And so being alone, relaxing, being on my own helps me. And not all men are aware of this. It's just a phenomenon. I wasn't aware, I need my cave time. I just wanted to be alone for a while and felt kind of guilty being alone for a while because my wife always would feel, oh, you don't love me? Because see, stress would go up because she interprets my tendency to pull back. She gives a meaning to it that I don't love her. Now, if she gives a meaning to that, I don't love her, then her stress levels are going to be all up all the time being in a relationship with me. Well, that's disastrous And that's what goes on in marriage. I'm only focusing on starting on the cave because that's what Nikki was excited about. Because actually, if you don't understand cave, your marriage is doomed. Because a man, if he doesn't take his alone time, he feels guilty taking his alone time because it hurts her feelings. But it doesn't hurt her feelings. It's her interpretation of him withdrawing that causes her feelings to be hurt, because she feels, naturally, she feels, oh, he doesn't love me, but I give so much to him. I love him. Why is he not giving to me? And then she spins off into illusion land. And then she reacts in ways which would be appropriate if you feel like somebody's not loving you and you're giving your heart to them. It hurts. So this has really been a big breakthrough with the Men Are From Mars ideas, was the recognition that men and women are really significantly different. And then there's a group of people that say to me, well, John, why do you talk so much about differences? Why don't we talk about how we're similar? And I agree. We are completely similar as human beings. There's no doubt about it. But it's the places, we all have a nose and a chin, but I've got a beard and most of the women don't. That's a little difference, right? It's a little difference. But what if you thought a man with a beard is dangerous? Then as soon as I grow my beard out, you pull away, you're afraid, you're stressed. It's interpretation. So we have to recognize when the conflict between men and women shows up, or when our inability to appreciate each other shows up, it's because we're not recognizing the value of our differences, and we're not recognizing the interpretation of our differences. Because one of the biggest areas, I say those are the two big areas where it's a big problem, we don't understand differences, is when we don't understand our differences, we're not able to appreciate ourselves. As I mentioned talking in the beginning, many women feeling like, gee, if I don't have a ready answer, if I'm jumping in there like I know everything, maybe I should question myself. No, shouldn't question yourself at all. That's his stupidity over there, okay? So not that men are stupid, but from the perspective of, hey, gather your information before you make an opinion. Men are a little different. In our world, it's like, okay, let me shoot out here first and see what happens. If nobody disagrees, maybe I've got the right answer. But women misinterpret men all the time. When men give their final answer, so to speak, women think it's final. Women don't realize that men are actually extremely flexible with what they believe if you give them new evidence. But they'll just shoot out there and see, did that work? Did it fly? Whoever does it. Anyway, I keep coming back to that. It's one of my favorite points in the workplace. But coming back to the cave. So if I'm going through a lot of stress during the day, that means whenever a man's stress levels are going high, his testosterone is going low. His estrogen is going high. So just know that cortisol in a man's body, we know cortisol is a stress hormone, is testosterone going low and estrogen going high, generally speaking. So if I want to rebuild my testosterone back up, what do I need to do? Well, what increases testosterone is whenever you're challenged and you feel confident to solve a problem. That's what increases testosterone. This is for a woman, this is for a man. Now, just remember, men need 10 times more, 20 times more testosterone. Some men 30 times more. It depends on the size of his shoulders. It's a requirement for us to feel a sense of well-being. And for those of you that would like to fall in love, women, you often, I see some women over 40. Often they come to me, I can't fall in love with a man. I can't fall in love with a man. Well, just go check your estrogen levels. They're lower. You can't fall in love and you can't stay in love unless you have high estrogen levels. That feeling of in love happens when your estrogen levels are much higher than normal. That's why we sort of dip into being in love, out of love, in love, out of love. It's all hormonal. We're completely, and on one level, ruled completely by our unconscious mind. All of our reactions are there. But we have this conscious mind that can reevaluate our reactions and make choices. But if you're not understanding what direction to go in, let's say you're a woman and you're overwhelmed, which is so common today, can't slow down the mind, busy, busy, busy. Oh, I have to do this, 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 I have to do this. That's a phenomenon I watched happening in women back in the 90s. It was like they were overwhelmed. I'm starting to hear men who are more feminized say that word, but basically in the 90s, I never heard a man say I'm overwhelmed. As soon as there's too much to do, what do? We rest. We go to our cave. If I can't do something, okay, then forget it. That's a general principle on Mars. You've heard that principle. If you can't do anything about it, forget it. Well, that's all great in theory for women, but they can't forget it. Why? Because for women, the way to find low stress levels is not to stop doing anything, but to change her hormones so she doesn't feel the need to solve problems. How does she change the hormones so she doesn't feel the need to solve problems? Talk. That's one of the key things. That's, back in the 90s, that was the big deal, okay? It's like, men don't listen. That's when Mars Venus came out, and you know, what I found as a therapist, and remember, I've been a therapist for 40 years, women come into my office and they're unhappy. I listen and I talk a little bit and I ask more questions and they end up feeling better. And I always thought this was amazing. It's like some kind of miracle. Don't tell them anything and they're happy. Now that seems sort of trite and superficial, but the kind of listening I do is investigative listening. Often, almost always, if it's a married woman unhappy with her husband, she'll come into the office with a list of complaints about her husband and how can she change him. Now, of course, that's what everybody does when they're unhappy. They try to change the outer world, and that's the losing formula. And that's why they're coming for help, because they're losing. They don't realize how they're losing, because if you try to change somebody, they will resist, always. So I would say, well, let's figure out, before we figure out what, I can give you great advice on what to do to change him. But first, I really need to understand the situation better. I need to understand how you feel about it. And so they would put off the idea, okay, we're not trying to change him. I'm just going to talk about what he's asked me to do and share my feelings. And then she'd feel better. And then after a few sessions, she felt safe. Then she'd cry. And then after she got that safe with me, then we'd say, how does this relate to your childhood? And we realize all her problems came from her childhood, because your problems are how you react to life. Your problems are how you react to situations. That's your stress levels. So that was all interesting for me as a passing comment. I'm just mentioning that I learned if I could be a good listener with women and not try to solve their problems, they felt better. And then that became sort of the mantra of the 90s when Men from Mars came out, which is, men, don't try to solve her problem. Just listen, ask more questions. And of course, men, we're not trained in asking for questions. So then I had to train men. What kind of questions do you ask? Well, there's three basic ones. Men generally need three. This is a new skill for men. The most masculine thing you can do actually is to listen. That's very interesting. Before I said solving problems, but when you're listening, you're actually gathering information so you can solve the problem. And if your wife is upset, if you listen and gather information from her to understand how she feels, what she wants, what she wishes, why she's upset, what's going on inside of her, where this come from inside of her, that's called validation. Trying to understand where she's coming from, then guess what, man? You're also solving the problem. And it's when you solve the problem that your testosterone goes up and you have staying power. You have focus, you have motivation. But this is all training. No man is taught this. We're all if you go back 20 years ago, men are pretty much programmed. Women are programmed. Be like a woman, be sweet, be kind, depend on your man. Men are supposed to be strong, tough, whatever. And that's it. We don't have any blending of the masculine and feminine. So it's a good thing, this evolutionary shift that's happened in the last 20 years, which is men having the option of becoming more sensitive, doing more what you enjoy doing. Women and being there for your children. I see so many fathers now carrying their children all the time like they're pregnant. They're just nurturing those kids. It's actually one of the biggest benefits of divorce. Because once you take the children away from a man and the woman's not connected to him, he wants to connect with those children. One of the differences between men and women is that if I'm at work, and I had 3 daughters when they were growing up, and if I'm at work providing for my family, my happiness is I'm doing something to provide for my family. That's part of masculinity, is sacrifice, noble sacrifice for a good good result. Okay, something meaningful, mission, purpose. So, and of course, it used to be, that was the mission. Men all knew our mission, which was to make money, to make women happy, and we'd be loved, we have a family, and life would go on. Now that mission is completely disturbed. Men don't know what their purpose is, what their missions are, unless it's just to make money, because women don't need us. But there's a huge, major crisis that happened, but it's an evolutionary shift, and we can adjust to it. Because when women no longer need men for financial support as a priority, and even if you're dependent on them, you still have divorce laws and so forth. You still have the opportunity to have education, go out, make your own money and so forth. So the dependence on men has dramatically dropped. Well, it turns out, you study psychology and sociology and research, you see hormonally, when a woman goes to a doctor for advice because she's concerned about her health, what does that mean? She needs help. Her estrogen levels will flare. Whenever you need help, your estrogen levels flare. Now, we have a society here, it's a chronic problem of low testosterone in men, and all over the board, everywhere. We see it now, testosterone levels dropping, sperm levels dropping, huge problem for males. We also see women, huge estrogen drops, hormonal imbalance, hormonal problems, women who have money going to doctors to get hormonal injections. Hormones. What is going on? Well, it used to be that when women depended on men for their survival and for their security and for their, basically those two things, you had high estrogen. Now, I grew up in a mother like that. She's a happy lady, very happy, fulfilled lady, because my dad had a good job. We lived in a safe neighborhood, and there was a country club walking distance to send her 6 boys to. She had 7 children, 6 boys and a little girl. I never saw my mother unhappy. I never saw my parents fight. We had a harmonious, happy family, not always between the boys, but mom would say, if you don't cooperate, I'll tell dad. So dad was to protect her. So she felt safe. She could depend on dad. What did she depend on dad for? To punish those boys if they misbehave. So she didn't have to worry about controlling them too much. He provided great money and support. He was also a gentleman. He didn't talk much. He watched TV all the time. My goodness, I'm a gentleman. If I was just a kind person, not getting angry is what I meant. My dad never got angry with my mother. He had certain values. Unfortunately, that's changed completely today, because as men are more, as their testosterone levels have dropped, their estrogen levels have risen, their reaction to anger is much, much greater. Men get so angry at their wives. I can't believe these stupid arguments that men and women have. She raises her voice because she's emotional. Well, guess what? Raising your voice, you're emotional. For a woman, that's the first step of getting in touch with estrogen. But when a man raises his voice in anger, his estrogen levels are going up. And guess what increases estrogen levels? Which men don't need. Talking. And what do women do when they argue with men? They ask us questions. The last thing you want to do with an angry man is ask him questions. It's like having a dog with a bone in his mouth. You're trying to take the bone out of his mouth by asking him questions. He'll bite you. Stay away. Go in the other room. Don't talk at that time. And you can talk to a friend, because if you start talking to somebody who's not resisting you, you'll feel better. So you think that if you get him to talk, he'll feel better. No. The only way, there's a caveat to everything I say. You know, this is such a vast knowledge through 26 books, okay? So for everything I say, you can go, oh, what's the exception here? What's the exception here? So let's look at one of the exceptions there, which is that, you know, men can become very angry and mean. And you know what you do to calm them down? This is dysfunctional solution. You say, you're right. And that's what women learn to do, because men were, if they were in a place of not feeling good enough about themselves, you know, if they didn't have a job, they would basically, their testosterone levels would go down. Their estrogen would go up. They become horrible, dysfunctional, mean, cruel, angry, lazy, passive, all the worst qualities of masculinity. We can see examples of that. And so what does a woman do? If he gets mad at her, the dysfunctional alcoholic father, appease him. You're right, you're right, you're right. And if I'm the one who upsets him, everybody makes me wrong. Like it's my fault, I upset daddy. No, it's daddy's fault. But we know if we tell him it's his fault, he just gets madder and madder and madder. And he'll talk so great. Oh, I'm so great. Yes, you're right. You're right. You're right. So yeah, you could be a doormat and create harmony and peace, but you won't grow in passion and love and light. So that's an example of, there are times though you can use that knowledge. What I teach women, if you want to boost a man's testosterone, make him a better person, just like I want to boost my wife's estrogen levels by showing affection, showing interest, planning dates, compliments, seeing her, giving her attention, noticing her when I come into the room, asking questions of her, showing a little interest, practicing my 3 techniques. Help me understand that better. What else? Tell me more about that. Tell me more. What else? Help me understand that better. You can use that in any business situation, men and women, if you want to use it too. Always somebody go, oh, somebody's interested in me. Femininity, the female side of us, ironically, is all about me. We think of femininity as so giving and giving and giving. Ironically, femininity, feminine energy, estrogen is all about, I can depend on you to give to me what I need. It's about my needs. And you know, that's not a problem. As a man doesn't see it selfish. He sees it as opportunity to help, opportunity to be successful, opportunity to solve a problem. It just becomes a real downer is when no matter what you say or do, it doesn't seem to help. And that's because men don't know what to do. And that's because women don't know what to tell them to do. And if they do know how to tell them to do it, they don't know how to tell them. They make it a demand. Like, unless you change, I can't be happy. Well, he'll never change. Unless you change, I can't be happy. He'll never change. If a woman's in a bad mood and she's upset with me and disapproving of me and unhappy because of me, if my approach to her is, I can't be happy unless you change, you shouldn't feel that way, she'll never change her feelings. See, these are very common examples of what we resist will persist in our lives. But most significantly is women don't understand that when you resist a man's behaviors, try to correct him, try to improve him, complain to him, point out his mistakes, get big emotions to try to change him, withhold your love to change him, to withhold sex to change him, to punish him, all those things women do. Not every woman does every one. I just thought about a bunch of my clients. And when they stop doing that, they're married to a different man. They don't need to find another man. He's there. She fell in love with him. He's there. She has to realize how she contributes to that problem. And he has to realize, where's the woman I fell in love with? She used to be so happy. Well, wake up, guys. What are you doing to increase her estrogen? See, anytime a woman smiles, her estrogen just went up. She's happy. Now, what makes us happy? Let's analyze what makes us happy. So many books all written about happiness. You can just simplify it down. I think one of the really happy moments for me recently was, I'm a big faster. I've just been fasting now 8 days. So I'm feeling quite good. And that's an art to it. I've art of that. And I do it so that my meditations are better. Also, I lost 12 pounds. Then I indulge myself for about 6 months. And then I gradually build up to about 12 pounds. And then I fast, have great meditations for a while. But for me, happiness is a simple thing. So I like to make orange juice. during my fast, a glass of orange juice every day. One of the things I do. And I saw online my juicer broke, so I needed my orange juice, right? So I ordered a juicer, and I really needed that juicer. And when it came in the package, I was so happy. I needed a juicer. I wanted a juicer. I got a juicer. It came in a package like a little boy at Christmas time. I was so happy. Then it turns out I have the best juicer in the world. Not that I will do this, but I could promote that juicer to the whole world. You don't have to do anything. You just put it on, put the roof down, and it squeezes it for you. And the cleanup takes a second, 10 seconds, no big deal. It's the best juicer in the world. I'm so happy with that juicer. So simple. Now that's because I also have estrogen as a man. I'm testosterone and I'm estrogen. When you get really down to the basic things of happiness, look at a child who's so happy. Little things make you happy. And when boys and girls from age 2 to 13, actually, well, boys' brains are different, girls' brains are different at that time, because the first 2 years of life, a baby boy will have the testosterone levels of a grown man, and that changes his brain. There is a brain difference between us. And then for the next 2 years old to 13 years old, a boy's testosterone and estrogen levels are almost like a girl's. So it's during that time where it's very important that we encourage and allow and support the emotions and feelings of a little boy, just like we would for a little girl. But once he hits puberty, his testosterone goes back up 5 times more, 10 times more. He now needs to focus on a different part of himself. And he needs to not feel guilty for that. And then he becomes a 21-year-old guy. He's dating a girl. Now they're living together. Now she's pouting because he's pulling into his cave, or he doesn't call back. What's the big thing of women? Whole books are written on this. One of the biggest questions I got in the 90s was, why doesn't he call back? Well, you could call him if you want. What's the big deal? I mean, why is this such a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because she doesn't understand why he doesn't call back. She's like waiting to talk to him. And this happens for so many women. They go on a good date, or particularly they have sex. Well, he should call me the next day. We're bonded now. That's because sex massively increases women's estrogen if they care about someone. So they're bonded. But what does sex do to men? As soon as that estrogen goes way up, it kicks his testosterone all the way down. That's why he pulls away. That's why he doesn't call back. That's why he needs his space. That's why he needs his distance. Get me away from that estrogen producer. Because connecting, relationship, interdependence, estrogen production. So many things around this whole thing.
John, I have a question, if that's okay to ask.
Yeah. I was waiting. Who's talking now?
Nikki.
Oh, Nikki, of course. Go ahead.
You open your current book with mentioning that you wrote the book 25 years ago or something like that, and things have changed. So you felt like you need to update. And I'm curious about the update for what you've shared now. Feels like this is chemics, right? This is a chemical process in the body ignited by action reaction. What did change over the past 30 years? What's the now?
Okay, first of all, the book you're referring to is Beyond Mars and Venus. So Beyond Mars and Venus. What we've been talking about here is a blend of men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and Beyond Mars and Venus. In a sense, men are from Mars teaches us how men and women misunderstand each other when men are more dominant masculine and women more dominant feminine. Beyond Mars and Venus teaches us how we can come back into balance when women are more dominant masculine and men are more dominant feminine. And it's hard for people to first understand, easy for women to get that a woman who's overly masculine, and overly masculine in this context only means she's disconnected to her female side. She's pushed down her female side in order to become masculine. She can express masculine qualities, no problem with that. It's when she has to suppress her feminine, that's the problem. And when men suppress their masculine, that's the problem. So a man out of work, for example, will display many of the worst characteristics of men. And a man who doesn't have to work will also display some of the worst characteristics of men. That's why back when I was growing up, kids who had famous parents, rich parents, these guys would grow up and they were called playboys. I think that's such a great phrase. They have no commitment. They have no enduring love. They take drugs. They drink. They're alcoholics. They want to play. They want to spend their money. They want immediate gratification. All of the worst qualities of human being they would exhibit. Why? Because they didn't have to work for it. They didn't earn it. So if a man can't earn it, or a man doesn't have a job to earn it and he needs it, you have the worst parts of men. The best parts of men is when he has a job and that job has selfless meaning to it, which is I make money to provide for my wife and my family. But when my wife and my family go, we don't really need you that much, it's not as fulfilling. See, men need that sense of accomplishment, achievement. So whenever you can, women, be gracious and say to a man, what a good idea. Or say to him, that makes sense. Or say to him, oh, you're right, we should do that. Just those verbal acknowledgments go a long way when it comes to a man. And what goes even bigger with men is overlook his mistakes. Overlook his mistakes. And if you want to talk about something that upset you, don't just talk about it, set it up. Realize that any time he's done something that triggers unhappy feelings in you, the message he gives to himself is going to be, I failed. His testosterone goes down. What to do? Oh, I forgot. I'm going off on another talk. I want to answer your question, which is, I forgot your question, Nikki. Go ahead and say it again, please.
The question was, what changed over the 30 years?
Okay, what changed is the environment, the culture. See, culture determines how we express our male and female sides. Culture doesn't create masculinity and femininity, doesn't invent it. Culture determines how we express our masculine side, determines how we express our feminine side. So we lived in an ancient culture for the sake of survival. We didn't have all this technology and advancement that we have today. For survival, we needed to have women making the babies and somebody protecting the women with the babies. So it was a partnership based upon those roles. And culture gave messages. What helped produce testosterone in men is this, this, this. And what helped produce estrogen and progesterone in women is this, this, this. Okay? So those are activities, behavioral activities that stimulate hormones that would produce estrogen and testosterone for men and women primarily. Now we have a new world because we're no longer in the need of survival and security through each other. Anybody on this call can provide their survival and security on their own based upon the culture we have now. Women, you don't need a man to, have a house, to have children, whatever. You can actually get, I know many women who have them. You just go get a sperm bank and make your own babies. Yeah, this is giving birth to a baby who doesn't know his father. I mean, it's beyond me what we're doing to this world. And also sending our children away to strangers to raise our children, another big problem today. We have created so many messes, but I think that every mess is a remodeling of the house, okay? Because my life is amazing because I understand gender differences. And it's just not that, okay? But understand gender differences. I understand all of my stress reactions are based upon childhood unresolved traumas, all of it. Otherwise, as an adult, what's there to be upset about? I have complete capabilities and so forth. I'm not a powerless child. How can somebody rejecting me, shooting me the finger and saying, that hurts me? I'm offended by that? It's like, what's your problem? It has nothing to do with me. So it's the childlike part of us that takes everything personally. It's not about us. It's about them. That's their problem, not me. So everything. So you have to understand gender difference, so important. And we're sort of focusing on that. Then the other part, I have other books on healing the heart, healing the past, healing our issues inside. That's so very, very important. And then when you got both those together, then you recognize, how you create the life, make the life that you dream. This is the foundation of success and happiness, is you have your mission and you're happy at it. The purpose of our male side, it lives by purpose, is to make a difference in other people's lives. It's to help. Now, we all want to help. That's our male side that wants to help. What's our female side? Part of it wants to be happy. And women, that's your big job. While you're helping everybody, come back to happy. Come back to happy. Don't do this stuff that makes you unhappy. The only reason men leave women is because they're not happy. And the only reason women leave men is because they help men too much and he doesn't change. Women say, I give and give and give. I don't get back. I'm leaving. And men say, no matter what I do this, she's never happy. And what's the answer to that? Men, what you're doing doesn't work. Women, what you're doing doesn't work. What you think is loving is poisoning him. When you give more to a man than he's giving to you, that means he didn't earn it. So his testosterone goes down. You just poisoned him. Then he pulls away to rebuild his testosterone. And then you go ask him questions and try to get him to talk, which only increases estrogen more, and he has to pull away more. So how can he stay interested in you? How can he try to connect with you? You're already too much in his face. And you think you're being loving. And then you give with resentment, passive aggressive, and all those kinds of things. We don't know better. Why? Well, we used to operate based upon unconscious conditioning from our childhood and so forth, and the world has changed. And that's the answer to your question, Nikki. This wonderful revelation has happened. I lived through it. I think I've seen it, and I can only share my experience. I was 18 years old. It was the summer of love, peace, love, meditation, LSD, higher states of consciousness, peace, love, free sex. It was an amazing time. Oh my God, did I love that time. I grew up my hair. I had long hair like a girl. I felt fantastic, so cool. I wore beads. I had this cool buckle on my belt. I had bell-bottom pants. I was a fashion guy walking around my cool boots, my incense, with my smelling. I'm exaggerating a little bit here. Actually, I got kicked out of school for my hair several times. Once for my pants. They said, you have to go home and change pants. You can't wear such flashy pants. Girls, you think back to this time, women, girls couldn't even wear pants at school. You had to wear dresses. See, we were stuck in these roles. Imagine stuck in these roles, but my soul has gone higher. My soul says, hey, it's time that I can handle both my male and female sides together. And so suddenly men were giving them, the culture started giving men permission to go to their female side. The culture gave women permission to go to their male side. Women started wearing pants. Women started forming circles, planned to be the CEOs, planned to run the country, planned to be the presidents. Why not us? So they're feeling the thrill, the arousal of their going to their male side after they've, throughout history, have never really been allowed to go there, supported to go there. So we had women's group, we had feminism, all these wonderful things to empower women to come back to who they are. Well, that's really one part of them. So if there's a part of you that's been suppressed and it comes forth, it feels like a thunderbolt. And it felt like a thunderbolt for me to suddenly have free sex, Oh my God, I remember I had sex the first time. It was magnificent. I wasn't married. You're supposed to be married before you could have sex. Imagine a world like that, but we all believed it. And to have sex, oh my God, started having sex with girls. It was like liberation. I don't have to follow the rules. I can do what I want. Oh, it was amazing. It was just diving into an ocean of estrogen, and it felt fantastic. And for women, it was diving into an ocean of testosterone. We have power. We have power. So think about masculine and feminine as complementary opposites. And it's a pendulum within ourselves, and we swing back and forth. It's just like I will go into the world. I go into my wife. I join her in sex, orgasm, togetherness. I need to pull back. I pull back. I pull back. I go in. I come out. It's a natural thing to go back and forth from your male and female sides. Okay, having said that, what happens if you go over to your male side and you're a woman and you don't know how to get back to your female side? And what if the whole culture says you're wrong for going back to your female side? Hard to get back to the female side. That's my next door neighbor is a doctor. She and her husband are both doctors. They went to medical school together. If there's any doctors online, you know that's a whole life commitment. It's a major, major endeavor. They both become doctors. That's their career. She had a whole sorority of women. They're all sisters, and you know, we have power. We're bringing it. We're going to come out and be powerful in the medical world. We can be acknowledged and seen for who we are, our brilliance. And then she marries her husband, and they decide to have a child, and she quits her practice. She stays home with my next door neighbor to raise her children. And she said all of her friends in the sorority won't talk to her. You betrayed us. You were a sister. What about women's empowerment? How dare you? How dare you? Stay home and do a ridiculous thing. Raise your children. How dare you? They're all, you know, under a variety of reasons. One reason, by the way, I know from my own experience of some women, which is they get really unhappy that they don't get to spend time with their children. They miss being with their children. They have to prioritize an instinct that says, I want to be there for my children. But I'll do this work because it empowers me. But I want to be there for my children. Now, how's that different from me as a man? You know, a man, and this is what I was talking about, how great divorce is for the whole sort of consciousness expansion that's happening, is many men were busy at work, just bleeding to support their families. That whole thing of not doing what you want to do, not doing what you love to do, but doing what you have to do to make money, to make your families happy. And if your families are happy, it's all rewarding. That's how men operate. It's all no big deal, no problem. I'm happy to do it if it makes you happy. And raising the children, yeah, I wasn't there when my children were crawling, when they're walking, when they're learning certain things. I didn't miss it. You know why I didn't miss it? Because I experienced it through my wife, because I felt her joy in that. I could experience raising my children through her. But if we were divorced, as so many men are today, they're not connected to their wives. They can't experience their children through their wives. So they want those kids. They fight for those kids. One of my friends, he's the lawyer, or he's a consultant for the lawyer to help men get their children just for equal time in America. Women get the kids. Men don't get the kids. Many states. She gets it. He doesn't get it. The only way a man can get it is spend over $100,000 in legal fees to get those kids. Not all the time. Men are not saying I want them all the time. They're saying, give me half time. Let's share. We both made them. Let's share. Oh, the courts are against that. Fine. They're slowly starting to make change. Because clearly we know the importance of a mother for a child. There's no doubt about it. But one of my recent books is called The Boy Crisis. What we've now learned biologically, and massive studies have shown this, how divorce devastates boys more than girls in terms of performance. We have huge statistical analysis of it. And boys have so much to learn from their fathers. And what's amazing to me is a lot of the feedback we get from the book, Boy Crisis, the important role of the father in raising the children. I show all the science associated with that. Fathers are waking up and going, I didn't realize I had such an important role. Very important role. We all know mothers have a role. There's no question about that. But the fathers have an equal role in the whole situation. So we talk about helping fathers recognize the importance of their role. It's not to be like mom. You have a different role. Now, here's an example of that different role for any of the men online. It's just such a good thing to know. Is under what is my value? What is my importance here? Just the fact that men typically, if they're grounded in their masculinity, they don't get upset about stuff. No big deal. Not a problem. We'll handle it. I'll solve it. We'll fix it. Mother's job is, let's keep that from happening. Let's avoid that. Let's protect ourselves from the problem, and that's a very important skill, how to think ahead to avoid the problem. Mothers are so good at that, worrying, concern, do this, don't do that. You want to, how to avoid the problem. That's good. You got a brain for that. Men have a brain for not going to focus so much on that. We're going to focus on how do we get to where we want to go? And if there's a problem, then how do we fix it? And that's our basic tendency. So I saw this in the first few years of my marriage with Bonnie. We've married 34 years. I talk to her like she's alive now, but she passed 2 years ago from cancer. And so I shift back and forth. She was or she is. She's still very much alive in my heart. And that doesn't go away. So here we were, and Bonnie had two little daughters when I married her. So they were my stepdaughters. And then there was our baby. We had a baby the first year. And now we got these three little girls. And I watched how Bonnie would become so overwhelmed. You know, we're just living in a culture which overwhelms women, you know, so much. And so fast, speed, this quick decisions stimulate testosterone. Just that, just driving on the freeway, driving into San Francisco from my house. So many decisions, cars going here, cars going there, this happening here, that's all testosterone, no estrogen. So Bonnie's feeling overwhelmed, trying to get three kids together in school and all the things, so forth. I said, honey, let's do something different. How about one day off? You just do whatever you want to do. What are the things you love to do? What are the things that make you happy other than me and the family? Because see, women have to learn estrogen is not going to all get produced by your husband. You want to have so many other things in your life that make you happy. You're dependent on those things. Bonnie was dependent on our garden, for example. She needed to go into that garden and nurture her little flowers. She needed that. That's a need to nurture. That's part of our female side, need. So she had to find things that she depended on to be happy. She also liked good movies. So she would go to some good movies for her, ballet, theater, whatever she felt would make her happy that wasn't dependent on her husband. Those are going to be estrogen stimulators. I just made her so happy. She could depend on me so much. She got stuck on me. That's what happens when women fall in love. They get stuck on their husbands. But see, you can't get everything you need from one person. That's another concept. I wrote a whole book on that, but it's like love vitamins. Just quickly, imagine you need vitamin A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, all those very important vitamins. Now, first of all, if you're sick, you don't even know what you need. That's why you don't have it. Those vitamins are easily available, but you're not getting them because you don't know what you need. And that's the first thing I point out to people when I tell them what they need. They say, how do you know what I need? I said, because you're sick. I'm not. And I make people better because I know what you need. And the only reason you're sick is you don't know what you need. That's what's happening today. Women don't know they need estrogen stimulators that are not dependent on changing a man. And men need to know they need testosterone stimulators and rebuilders that are not dependent on their relationship. And you have to do it for yourself. So imagine I have all my vitamins except vitamin D. Now, turns out vitamin D in this metaphor is, we know vitamin D is produced by the sunshine. That would be your relationship, your primary relationship, romantic love. So suddenly this man comes into your life, women, and he's like vitamin D. And if you're missing all the other vitamins and you get the sunshine, wow, you feel fantastic. And anybody's had that feeling when there's been clouds for days and days and the sun comes out, you feel fantastic. Okay, now once you got your vitamin D and you got all your other vitamins, you feel great. But what if you run out of the other vitamins? Vitamin D can't do it for you anymore. You need the whole picture. So I got a little off my point there. I see Mickey kind of, cheers to you, buddy. I'm having a really good time with your group here. You're a wonderful audience. I feel like I'm talking to the whole world and I have so much energy. See what happens when you learn how to fast, then you don't have you don't use all your, 80% of your energy goes to digesting your food. So you have tons of energy. Let me get on.
I have a question while you're drinking, and I hope that's okay. And then we can also actually open it up for everyone.
Yes, I would love that. I would love that.
You're separating the roles and giving advice to how to understand the other. And I understand that the man is built to provide, right? Women is built to nurture, man is built to provide. And that's very much about physical thing, right? The financial security, a home, all these kinds of things that the man is built to provide. Is the man also built to provide emotional security? Is the man
Okay, but
built to provide safe space?
yes, safe space. So if women don't need, that's the whole point. You brought us to the whole point of my book, Beyond Mars and Venus. Thank you for evolving me to the point. When our lower needs we can provide for ourselves, then higher needs come into play. And the foundation of our higher needs is safe space, emotional fulfillment to be authentic, emotional fulfillment to be authentic. And what that requires is if a woman is to be authentic, she needs to, if she's too far on her male side, she needs to come back to her female side, and she needs permission and support, encouragement, and understanding to help her come there. No judgment, no criticism, no blame, no bad. That's safe space to emotionally, for her to experience the safety to be myself. And men need the safety of love and support to be themselves as well when it comes to the activities that generate their testosterone levels. Opportunities is the key for men. Is she needs opportunity to feel safe, to be authentic. He needs opportunities to express his masculine side. He needs a job, for example. That's very important for men. And just for our own emotional fulfillment. But if he has a job, he has all those things. The bottom line is she's got a job. She's got all those things. What does he need from her? He needs to feel she needs me to provide emotional fulfillment for her. Therefore, I have a mission and purpose in providing that emotional fulfillment for her. So actually providing emotional fulfillment for a woman, which helps her come back to her feminine energy, which she needs most right now in our history, puts men back in their male side because they're the provider of something that women need our help for. So that's the dynamic. It's a whole new dynamic is, for example, if I'm a good listener, I'm actually increasing my masculine energy unless I'm expressing my masculine energy. But if my masculine energy is low, then I need to rebuild it. That's why men can't just sit there and listen. At a certain point, they connect. When they connect, their estrogen levels start to go higher. Their testosterone levels go low. They need to pull back. They want to solve your problem right away. The lower their testosterone levels are, the more they want to get in there and keep them up. I care about you, so I want to solve the problem. There's a fire going. You're upset. I want to put it out right away, as opposed to having strong testosterone and being able to be present for her while the fire is burning itself out. In a sense, she will talk herself through it if you can create a space for that to happen. And many men can do that. Some men still can't because they're more on their female side. So if they're more on their female side, their estrogen goes up faster, and then they get all frustrated and I got to solve the problem. I got to solve the problem. I have no patience. I have to have immediate gratification. And so what he needs to do is recognize one is he needs to have plenty of testosterone, but two is he needs to just learn what his job is. You know, if you don't know what your job is, you don't feel you're being successful. I'll give you a fun example for this. This really saved me a lot. This is for the guys, because, you know, I get sort of bent out of shape if my wife was unhappy about something. And just for the women to understand, let's look at what she's unhappy about. She's unhappy that I left the lights on in the living room because we're all into the green movement. That's what she's unhappy about. And in my mind, just go, you're unhappy with me because I forget to turn out the lights? You live in a 5,000 square foot house. You have 6 acres. You have 3 employees to help you with your garden. You have 3 cars. You have unlimited vacations. You've got nannies. You've got everything you could ever imagine. And you're upset with me? So I just want to point out the absurdity of what happens when people have money. If you're a woman, you have to have something to be upset about if you're stressed. So what she did to solve that problem, by the way, is she recognized if she makes a big deal out of something little, it causes me to feel, how can I empathize with that? All she had to do, and this is what I tell women, it's the most powerful skill in the world. If you want your husband to change, like turn out the lights, you say, honey, the other day you left the lights on. Now it's not a big deal, but it'd be really nice if you try to remember, thank you, and run out of the room. Don't expect an apology. Don't expect a promise. And the next time he does it, just mention, hey, you know, that's all those, I turned those lights out again. And I know you turned the lights out so many times. That's called appreciating him for the times he does it. But sometimes you still forget. And it's not a big deal, but it'd be really nice. Thanks. And walk out of the room. Anytime you express your emotions to a man, if you say to him, it's not a big deal. I know you do so many wonderful things about me. Some inferred message. I'm not questioning how much you love me and how great you are. But sometimes blah, blah, blah. And that makes me feel blah, blah, blah. And I realize blah, blah, blah is my own issues, because it is your own issues. But it'd be really nice if you would do this. Thanks. And walk out of the room. There's ways to communicate. If we're going to look for emotional fulfillment in our relationships, we don't have a whole set of skills how men and women can communicate with each other in this new era that we live in, where when we're all like have these emotional needs. And the biology of this, to keep our hormones in balance, is women's emotional needs are met through greater understanding of what they feel. That's called validation. Hear her, see her, touch her. Care about her, be concerned, do little things that show consideration, and most of all, respect. Respect her differences, respect her needs, respects her wishes, respects her sensitivities, respect. These are the things men are weakest at. It's what women need the most. And the things men need the most are the things women are weakest at. What are the things men need most? They need to feel that they're trusted. As soon as a man forgets one thing, she goes, oh, I can't trust him. I can't trust him. He makes a mistake. Does it mean he can't learn? No. You think, oh, he's always going to be that way? That's childlike thinking. People can grow. People can change, particularly at this new level of life that we're at, where we have self-reflection. You see, emotional fulfillment is based upon self-reflection. So if you have self-reflection, you can change, but you don't change if somebody's trying to change you. You change because it's your own wish and desire. So trusting a man. How many times, women, did you want to get help from a man you didn't even ask? Oh, he won't do it anyway, so why bother? You asked him once, he forgot, oh, I'll just do it myself. Well, then you just gave him a big dose of, I don't trust you. Well, I don't trust you. Well, I don't trust you. Trust, very important. That's why there's statues everywhere. Men, look, men are heroes. Look, we're great. Because when you trust a man, what is trusting a man? It's depending on a man. If you depend on a man, he feels like Superman. And guess what? Your estrogen levels go up. It's a win-win. All of these differences are win-wins once we realize what they're about. So practicing trust, you have to practice trust. Realize that's your weakness. You have to practice acceptance. Oh, that's another one. That's the no big deal. It's no big deal. It's not a problem. Next time, I'd appreciate if you tried, but no big deal. Wow. Just practice all the time. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. What I really prefer, I know you do this so many times the right way. Sometimes you forget. I really appreciate this. Make your request and then let it go.